Hey, what's up guys and gals? My name is Rick9G. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to be talking about Hogan's Heroes, more specifically about Robert Clary. Now, Robert Clary is currently alive at the time that this video is posting. He is pretty much the last surviving person of the Hogan's Heroes cast, and I'm going to dive into his character, LeBeau. And I think it's really important, especially during this time, to know that you have my support. We are in this all together, guys and gals. Don't worry about it. Hopefully this video brings you a little bit of interesting information from a show that you love so much. I know you're all dying to know his true thoughts about being on Hogan's Heroes, and specifically about how he was used in the show. Now, I did make a video specifically on Sergeant Carter, played by Larry Hovis, and how he felt himself an Invisible Man. And I also talked a little bit about broadly how the supporting cast of the show had their issues as well with how they were used. But today, as I mentioned, Corporal LeBeau. Now, if you look in the first season of the show, he actually didn't venture out of the barracks very often. You would most likely see him inside the barracks with the heroes, and whenever the main characters, that is of course Hogan, or where we see Carter, or even Kinchlow, they would be outside, and then Louis would pretty much stay inside. Now, his quote-unquote heroic duties consisted of him serving up these delicious dishes for the heroes themselves, as well as for Colonel Klink when he had a guest over, even for Sergeant Schultz, trying to bribe him to get something that the heroes needed. They got through them with the delicious French food. Now, this is the rendition that comes directly from Robert Clary himself. He said that because in his mind, he was the best known of all of them, of all the actors when he first signed with Hogan's Heroes. He saw himself in his singing and dancing before the show, that he was the most widely known. But after the camera started rolling and the episodes started to be pumped out, he explained that he felt like the fifth wheel. And many times all he had to do was say, "How are we going to do that, Colonel?" Or "Crowd's coming," or "How, Colonel?" And in his mind, he felt he was pushed aside. He mentioned a very specific episode in which one day he had a scene in which he was filming that LeBeau, although he was on camera, he had no lines. He had nothing to do with the plot, and he just stood in the background with his back to the camera. Now think about that. How would you feel if that was your position as an actor? Now, Clary himself mentioned that he was fed up, and he asked the director, Howard Morris, to remove him from the scene. He said, "I wasn't doing anything in this scene," and he was very nice about it, he being of course the director, and he did cut him out. But looking upon his actions from today, Clary agrees that it was a little bit unprofessional and even selfish of him to do something like that. Now, after that episode, Clary made peace with himself and the role by saying to himself that there's two things that he could do. He could be very unhappy, get out, or go to Ed Feldman. Now, Ed Feldman, in case you don't know, was the main honcho, the big guy on campus. He was, of course, the producer of the show, and he could have said, "Hey, I'm sick and tired," or he can essentially just keep quiet, not say anything, and enjoy the rest of the series. And that's what he did. So during the subsequent following seasons, the audience actually got to see more of LeBeau. He was actually, Robert Clary, 5'3". He was small in stature, but we could see he had this spice to him that many people actually enjoyed watching. Many viewers actually enjoyed. But the cast was in itself large, and it was difficult to have each actor kind of play equal roles in every episode. There was always someone who would be cut out. Now, according to him, some of the writers would write more for him than with others. So he said if there was ever a script written by Larry Marks or Artie Julian, he knew he would have a good share of the half hour because they usually wrote a lot of parts for LeBeau. But if he saw something written by Richard Powell, then he knew he wasn't going to get a lot of work that week, and it was all going to the guest stars. That's really interesting that depending on who wrote the episode was going to say how much work he had that week. But at this point in his life, he agreed that he was no longer upset at the lack of stardom or at the lack of status that he had on the camera. He actually embraced it and even mentioned that his pay was pretty good, so he really shouldn't have complained in the first place. I want to know your thoughts down below, guys and gals. Were you ever a fan of Corporal Louis LeBeau? Did you enjoy him on the show? Were you happy when he got less parts or more? I really want to know what you think, because I definitely have my opinion on the character itself, and I may reveal it in the future, but now it's time to hear from you. Don't forget, a subscription to this channel, if you hit subscribe, is absolutely free, and it does more for this channel than you may even believe. So thank you so much ahead of time for doing that, and a thumbs up let me know that you want to see more Hogan's Heroes. I do appreciate that. We'll see you next time, and don't forget, be hopeful. Thank you to my Diamond tier patrons, Andrew B, Ricky, and David D. And thank you to every single one of my Patreons where I have exclusive content. Be sure to look in the description below for merchandise, Patreon exclusive content, as well as playlists where you can find other TV shows and sitcoms that I think you'll enjoy. We'll see you all next time.